Everything is inevitable after it happens. But people at the time didn't know what was going to happen. They didn't know a civil war was on the horizon. Many in the Upper South felt, well, let's just see what happens.
A full-color photograph from the Civil War, more than a century before color film was invented. This image not only defies technological history, but also reveals a man standing beside Abraham Lincoln, whom no one has ever identified. Who was this silent figure caught between history's giants? What secrets could this long-lost photo hold that have remained hidden for 100 years? This isn't just an old picture, it's a puzzle with the power to rewrite what we thought we knew about America's past. The unexplainable photograph. A single photograph can preserve a moment in time. But what happens when that moment seems impossible? That was the question raised when an unusual Civil War image surfaced, one unlike anything experts expected to see from 1865. Instead of the faded black and white tones usually associated with the era, the photograph appeared in startling full color. Deep blue Union uniforms, worn brown boots, pale skin tones, and even the grain of a wooden chair stood out with lifelike detail. At the center of the image stood Abraham Lincoln, surrounded by decorated military leaders. General Grant was there too. But between them appeared another man, quiet, serious, and completely unknown. He stood in a position of importance, yet no archive, roster, or official record seemed to identify him. That alone made the photograph disturbing. Experts first wondered if the colors had been painted onto the image later, as was sometimes done with old portraits. But this was different. The color did not appear to sit on the surface. It looked embedded into the image itself, as if the photograph had captured color decades before such technology should have existed. The discovery immediately challenged what historians believed was possible. But the unknown man created an even deeper mystery. His uniform carried no clear rank. He wore no recognizable insignia or honors. He did not appear in known military lists, nor was he mentioned in records tied to Lincoln, Grant, or the men surrounding them. And yet, he was not standing at the edge like a servant or bystander. He stood near the very center, close enough to Lincoln to suggest trust, purpose, and importance. The arrangement felt deliberate. Then there was this empty wooden chair sitting right beside Lincoln. At first it looked like just another object in the scene, nothing too dramatic. But the more people leaned in, the more it began to feel like some kind of signal. Like it was marking a gap, a caution, or a sly meaning, something nobody was really meant to grasp. The photograph stopped behaving like a casual group portrait and started looking, like a message buried in plain view. When Claire Donovan first found the image, she knew it was more than a family keepsake. Her hands, it's been said, shook while she stared at the faces, the tones, and that mysterious man standing where history says no one of his sort should have been. The photograph seemed to hold a secret that somehow survived for more than 100 years. Later, when the specialists came together to examine it, the room often went quiet, as if it were holding its breath. The picture felt overly deliberate, too unusual, too forceful to just brush aside. It wasn't only an antique. It felt like a key to a hidden chapter of American history, one that had been locked away somewhere. The central question just kept coming back. Who was the unknown man? Was he a soldier wiped out from the records like it never happened? A spy in quiet operation, no less? Or some kind of protector placed near Lincoln beyond the normal, official chain of command? Maybe his presence points to something darker, something that got tucked away with unusual care. That photograph basically refused to be pinned down. It went against both usual tech and the written documentation. The coloring didn't really fit the accepted timeline for photography. And the figure, unidentified, threw shade on the official narrative about who stood so close to Lincoln during one of the most dangerous stretches in American history. What made it feel especially chilling wasn't only what the image showed, but also what it hinted at, like the whole scene had a missing layer. Someone was there, someone consequential, someone history forgot or deliberately sanded down. This wasn't only a picture from long ago, it felt like a crack in the record, a still instant that hinted history might have hidden more than it actually saved. And once that photograph came into public view, the mystery couldn't stay buried anymore. The profound mysteries that rested within that single frame led naturally to the story of how it came to light. A journey that began quietly in a dusty attic long forgotten. Discovery in an attic. The photograph's journey to public attention started without fanfare in a small family home's attic. Claire Donovan had no intention of making a historic discovery that day. She was simply cleaning through old trunks, sorting through decades of family belongings, railroad bonds, lace gloves, faded letters, and buttons from a bygone era. Among these relics, her hand brushed against something unusual, a leather photo album, worn and cracked, with curled corners like dry leaves. Most of the album contained typical black and white portraits from the late 1800s, but one photo was different. Sealed in wax paper, the photograph was heavier than the others and gave off a faint scent Claire couldn't place. Something like tobacco and glue, old and strange. She waited until the room was clean, dust-free, and her curiosity irresistible before carefully pulling back the wax sleeve. What she saw made her breath catch. Abraham Lincoln himself, standing in full color in a vivid, lifelike scene. The colors were not painted on later, but integral to the photograph, a fact so unusual it shook her hands. Claire knew immediately this was no ordinary family picture. The image depicted a casual gathering of high-ranking Union officers, including General Ulysses Grant. But what seized her attention was the empty wooden chair beside Lincoln and a mysterious figure standing quietly between the famous leaders. This posed more questions than answers. How had such a photograph survived undiscovered for so long? And who was the man almost hidden in plain sight? Recognizing the potential importance, Claire sought out Professor George Kramer, a Civil War photography historian who had once guest lectured at her university. When Kramer first saw the print, he was speechless. His hands trembled as he studied the photo, and his reaction was a mix of disbelief and urgency. He needed to know exactly where Claire had found it. The provenance mattered greatly in a case like this, especially given the photograph's uncanny features. The story of the album's preservation added layers to the intrigue. The photo had not been displayed publicly, sealed away quietly inside a forgotten trunk for generations. This accidental survival suggested something more. Perhaps the image was never meant for ordinary eyes. The fragile state of the album and the care taken to protect that one photograph insinuated a secret passed through the family by weight of its content. As Claire and Kramer brought the photo to experts at the New York Historical Society, it became kinda clear that the image was not like anything folks had seen before. Forensics specialists looked at everything with high-resolution scans, then started analyzing the paper's chemistry, pigments, and those emulsion layers. At first, their findings felt nearly impossible, and it just kicked off this chain of questions about historical accuracy and where the photo even came from. But then the suspense was the man standing with Lincoln, who wasn't in any known military rosters at all. His story seemed scrubbed away, like time or intent. Claire's own connection to him made it worse in a way. She pretty quickly figured it was her great-great-grandfather. But his documented history ended with him being listed as missing in action just days before the photo's capture date. That mismatch didn't sit quietly. Instead, it pushed the investigation well past normal family lore. What started as an attic discovery, simple really, turned into this kind of portal to a secret world. It linked a forgotten past with today's tech and forensic science. The dusty album, which had been treated as nothing more than storage, was suddenly a key for opening locked doors in Civil War history and more. That origin story basically set the tone for even deeper questions, especially the impossible colors and the silent figure's real identity. And the fact that the photograph survived by accident after a whole century mattered a lot. It was like a doorway for uncovering truths that some people might have wanted kept out. Now the search for answers stretched beyond attic walls and beyond family memory too, forcing a hard look at what else history might have left out of sight. The astonishing image would not only challenge technological timelines, but also change the way historians understood the war's final days, revealing secrets in its very chemistry and composition. Breaking photographic limits. The first thing that shocked experts was the photograph's color. It came from an era when Civil War images should have appeared only in black and white. Yet this one showed vivid blues, browns, and skin tones preserved directly on paper. At first, researchers assumed the colors had been added by hand, a common practice in the 19th century. But closer analysis revealed something far stranger. The pigments were not painted on the surface. They were embedded deep inside the photograph's emulsion. That discovery changed everything. The image was identified as an albumin silver print, a process widely used in the 1860s. But albumin silver prints were not designed to hold color dyes. The chemistry should not have worked. Yet somehow, this photograph had preserved color in a way experts believed was impossible for its time. Forensic imaging revealed traces of organic pigments, including materials similar to beetroot and indigo. These were known in 19th century fabric dyeing, but not in photography. Combined with oil-reactive compounds and precise light exposure, they suggested an experimental process far ahead of its era. Specialists described it as a hybrid technique. It was not purely silver-based, and it was not modern color photography either. Instead, it seemed to blend pigments, animal-based adhesives, and gum arabic in a fragile chemical balance that allowed the colors to survive for more than a century. This was not the kind of image meant for mass production. It was too delicate, too expensive, and too advanced. Experts believed it may have been a prototype, possibly created in secret for someone powerful enough to request such a thing. Then another clue emerged. Historical notes referenced a secret photographic plate allegedly requested by the president himself. If true, it suggested the image was not simply a portrait. It was meant to survive as a time capsule. That possibility raised deeper questions. Why would Abraham Lincoln need such an advanced photograph created in secret? Why preserve this specific moment? And why include a mysterious man who vanished from official records? The technology and the mystery became impossible to separate. The photograph did not just challenge the timeline of color photography, it challenged the official story surrounding Lincoln's final days. What experts had once dismissed as impossible was now sitting in front of them, preserved in light, pigment, and silence. This was more than a technical miracle. It was proof that history can hide its biggest secrets in plain sight. And this photograph was not just showing the past. It was daring the present to uncover what had been buried. Each new revelation deepened the mystery, opening doors to a forgotten world where technology and trust collided in the war's final hours. The mystery man's identity. The man standing silently between Abraham Lincoln and Ulysses S. Grant was unlike anyone recorded in Civil War archives. His uniform lacked any insignia or badge that might indicate rank or unit, an anomaly that puzzled historians and archivists alike. Claire Donovan recognized something familiar in his face, a vague echo from family photographs decades later. The discovery triggered a deep dive into the past, searching records and memories that had long been buried or erased. Claire pulled up a photograph from 1912 showing a man outside a barn, his hand resting on a dog's head. The likeness was undeniable, the same jawline, ears, and steady gaze. This was her great-great-grandfather, William Donovan. But the image raised immediate questions. How could he appear in a photograph dated 50 years earlier at such a critical moment in American history? More importantly, why was his name absent from every known military roster? To piece together the mystery, Claire consulted with Professor George Kramer, a leading Civil War photography historian, who acknowledged Donovan's absence from official records with growing concern. Some speculated he might have been a volunteer or even a civilian momentarily caught in military attire. Yet the photograph's intentional framing suggested something far more significant. Donovan's presence was not a mistake, but a secret kept at the highest levels. Claire's research uncovered an entry for William Donovan in Civil War service records, noting him as a medic in the 104th New York Infantry. However, his status was missing in action as of April 6, 1865, just days before the date the photograph was believed to have been taken. This discrepancy deepened the mystery. How could Donovan be standing beside Lincoln days after his recorded disappearance? His story was one of erasure and silence. Further investigation suggested that Donovan's disappearance wasn't just some accident of war or clerical oversight, at least not in the straightforward way people want to believe. Family stories, you know, the kind that get repeated in kitchens and hallways, described a man who served faithfully but then simply vanished before the war's end. After that, there were only vague records, and what little paperwork ever showed up felt abrupt, like it had been cut off mid-breath. There was no real explanation, just an uneasy gap, which made it look like something had been tucked away under the listed facts. That missing chapter in Donovan's life felt curated, like an absence with intention behind it. The more strange part became obvious later when Claire recalled a faded yellowed letter her grandfather had shown her. The letter was written by Donovan himself decades after the war. It carried cryptic warnings, but there was one instruction that sat heavier than the others. It said that if the photograph with the chair ever resurfaced, it should be destroyed right away. Not later, not carefully preserved. Destroy it immediately. The message made it sound like the image was never supposed to endure or be viewed, almost like it was a live wire that couldn't be handled. So the photograph wasn't only silent, because time swallowed it. The figure in it seemed deliberately obscured, like someone tried to edit reality without touching the paper. While Lincoln and Grant's legacies loomed large, Donovan's story was hidden behind layers of official denial, plus family secrecy that didn't quite add up. That raised a haunting question. Why would a trusted man vanish without a trace, especially while standing with two of America's most iconic leaders? What truth was his erasure meant to shield, or protect, or bury under nothing to see here? And still the suspicion lingered, like smoke that refuses to leave. People believed Donovan's removal from public view was orchestrated by forces beyond the battlefield. Some thought his role was sensitive enough to require invisibility, a kind of ghost among generals and politicians. Even the photograph, the same one everybody pretends is just an artifact, seemed to imply he wasn't merely a medic or volunteer. The man in the middle remained an enigma, a silent witness to history's most critical moments, carefully excised from official memory. His story would soon demand recognition not only as a forgotten soldier, but as a pivotal figure whose legacy challenged everything accepted about the Civil War's closing chapter. Hidden military role. As researchers dug deeper into the archives, William Donovan's mysterious presence in the photograph began to make sense. He may not have been a regular soldier at all. Instead, evidence suggested he belonged to a secret group operating under Abraham Lincoln's direct orders, outside the normal military chain of command. The first clue came from a rarely accessed War Department memo dated April 1865. It mentioned shadow posters assigned to sensitive missions that were not to be logged. Another line warned that no weapons should be drawn unless absolutely required. But the most chilling detail was the phrase "Al's request," which appeared to point directly to Lincoln himself. This hinted at something hidden behind the public version of history, a quiet protection network built for moments when official channels could not be trusted. These men carried no public rank, wore no obvious badges, and left almost no paper trail. They were meant to watch, report, and protect without ever being noticed. That possibility explained why Donovan stood so close to Lincoln, yet appeared nowhere in the official records. He was not missing from history by accident. He may have been removed from it on purpose. Then forensic imaging revealed another stunning detail. Beneath Donovan's jacket lapel, experts found a tiny stitched patch marked with the letters PEC. The letters were believed to stand for Presidential Escort Committee. The patch was hidden from casual view and did not appear in any known military registry. For the experts, this discovery was disturbing. It suggested Donovan had a direct connection to a secret presidential detail, one that was never meant to be publicly acknowledged. The idea matched scattered rumors found in private diaries and coded messages from Lincoln's aides. These records describe trusted men chosen to quietly shield the president and observe sensitive threats. Their secrecy was not a flaw in the record. It was the entire point. But that raised an even darker question. Why erase someone who served so close to power? As the Civil War neared its end, Lincoln had reason to distrust political rivals, military insiders, and possible conspirators. He needed protectors who existed beyond bureaucracy, men loyal only to him. Donovan may have been one of those silent guardians, standing watch during the nation's most dangerous final hours. Even the empty wooden chair in the photograph took on new meaning. It no longer looked like a simple prop. It seemed like a symbol of danger, absence, and decisions made in secrecy. The photograph was no longer just a family relic. It had become evidence of a hidden war within the war, and Donovan was standing at its center. The photograph's technical marvel and the man's mysterious identity open a path toward uncovering not just forgotten history, but concealed truth, woven through shadowy networks and silent promises. The chilling message. The mystery of the photograph became even darker when forensic imaging expert Elsa examined a tiny detail on William Donovan's uniform. Beneath the faded PEC patch, believed to stand for the Presidential Escort Committee, she noticed something almost invisible to the naked eye. At first, it looked like worn fabric or a loose thread, but under enhanced imaging, the stitching formed words. The message read, "Target verified. Stand until April 14th. The room fell silent. April 14th, 1865, was the night Abraham Lincoln was assassinated at Ford's Theater. Suddenly, the photograph was no longer just strange. It became terrifying. Did Donovan know a threat was coming? Had he been assigned to protect Lincoln until that exact date? The message suggested something far beyond ordinary military duty. It hinted at warning, surveillance, and perhaps even foreknowledge. Donovan's presence beside Lincoln already raised questions. He had been listed as missing in action, yet there he was, standing near the president, connected to a secretive group whose official record was not fully explained. His disappearance no longer looked like an accident of war. It began to feel deliberate. Claire suddenly remembered Donovan's old letter, the one warning his descendants to burn the photograph if it was ever found. Only now, the warning felt bigger, heavier, like it had been waiting. The image wasn't just a family relic or whatever you'd call it. It was something else, maybe evidence of a risky secret, something Donovan never wanted out, not in daylight, not even by accident. Then the stitched message, all crooked and careful at once, changed the whole thing. It implied Donovan had been placed near Lincoln for a reason. He wasn't simply standing there for a portrait. He could have been guarding, watching, or waiting for a threat, the kind only a few people would actually recognize. But when April 14th arrived, what then? Was he told to step back, to stand down? Or did he do what he was supposed to and still not prevent the assassination? After that date, the records go quiet, and that emptiness makes the suspicion grow. Donovan seemed to slip out of history right when his mission should have mattered most. To the experts, the message read like a breadcrumb left on purpose, like a signal, a confession, or a direct request to keep everyone silent. So what used to be a strange, almost harmless photograph became a darker problem, stitched in thread and hidden in plain view. Donovan's uniform held more than a patch. It carried a secret tied to loyalty, fear, and maybe betrayal. And in that moment, the quiet man standing beside Lincoln stopped feeling like a figure in the background. He became one of history's most chilling, unanswered questions. Something far larger loomed behind this private warning, hinting at a hidden network built on trust and silence, leading into a history even the war's greatest public figures barely glimpsed. Lincoln's shadow network. What if Abraham Lincoln protected himself not only with soldiers, but with an invisible force operating beyond public records? The document uncovered by Professor Kramer suggested exactly that. A secret group assigned to guard sensitive operations, watch for threats, and protect the president without recognition. This hidden force appeared to be known as the Presidential Escort Committee. Unlike official soldiers, its members carried no public rank, badge, or title that would appear in normal military rosters. Their authority came directly from Lincoln himself. They were placed where ordinary channels could not reach, acting as silent eyes and ears during one of the most dangerous periods in American history. At a time when political trust was fragile and the Civil War was nearing its end, Lincoln had reason to be cautious. He needed protectors who could move quietly, report discreetly, and act without drawing attention. Donovan's mysterious presence near Lincoln and his absence from official records suddenly made sense. He was not forgotten by accident. He may have been hidden by design. The clues found with Donovan deepened the mystery. His badge and the coded message stitched into his coat suggested a world of secret instructions, dangerous assignments, and loyalty that could never be publicly rewarded. These men existed like ghosts in history, appearing only in fragments, whispers, and rare discoveries. The photograph itself sort of became a powerful emblem. That vacant chair next to Lincoln was no longer just some odd detail. It felt like it was pointing to a moment where danger, authority, and sheer decision kind of bumped into each other. Donovan's calm stance nearby made it seem like he was poised, like he was standing right between the president and some unseen threat, even if you couldn't quite name it. For historians, this changed everything. Secret intelligence during the Civil War had been talked about for a long time, but usually without anything so intimate. Donovan's account showed how certain men served in silence, not erased because they couldn't keep up, but erased because secrecy demanded their absence. As researchers sifted through field notes, letters, and half-forgotten memos, a broader pattern came into view. Lincoln's hidden shadow network may have included men whose loyalty was absolute, guarding not only one leader, but the future of a nation that was badly hurt. In the end, Donovan was more than just a soldier missing from the official record. He stood for the hidden price of protection, the weight carried by people who stay unseen, while history tends to mention only the celebrated. Lincoln's shadow network reminds us that some of the most crucial figures in history were never supposed to be noticed. Not really, not ever. And as we look deeper into these secrets, the story of one man who stood where no one expected becomes a beacon, illuminating the forgotten corners of history's final act, legacy and public reveal. For more than a century, the photograph stayed hidden inside Claire Donovan's family, protected like a private oath. Many people wanted it, networks, collectors, even academic institutions, but Claire refused to let it become a trophy or spectacle. To her, the image was not just rare history. It was a sacred legacy, tied to a man whose story had been buried for generations. When Claire finally chose to reveal it, she did so carefully. She partnered with the New York Historical Society to create an exhibit titled "The Man Who Stood." The purpose was not to glorify war or turn Lincoln into the only focus. Instead, the exhibit centered on William Donovan, the forgotten figure standing at the heart of the photograph. Inside the exhibit, visitors saw an enlarged replica of the image, preserved behind glass and softly lit. Every detail invited closer inspection: the faces, the vivid color, and most importantly, the empty wooden chair. That chair became a chilling symbol of danger, secrecy, and the decision that may have changed history. Besides the photograph, panels sort of told Donovan's story through letters, records, and family testimony. His military service, strange disappearance, a shadowy assignment, and the letter signed only Al were finally put out in front of the public. For a lot of visitors, it was basically the first time they ever heard his name, like completely by surprise. Claire did not want Donovan remembered as a famous hero or a grand commander. She wanted people to look at him as a man who carried a burden in silence. His legacy was watchfulness, loyalty, and quiet sacrifice. Not the loud kind either, more like the steady kind you don't notice till later. The exhibit brought in students, veterans, tourists, and historians. Many stood there without moving before the photograph, studying the chair and the letter, as if history had whispered from behind the glass, just for them. In the end, The Man Who Stood became more than an exhibit. It turned into a reminder that history isn't only shaped by the famous, but also by those who stand in the shadows, protecting others without ever asking to be seen. This photograph shattered timelines and uncovered a secret network lurking behind history's grand stage. It tells a story of loyalty, sacrifice, and forgotten duty, reminding us that history often holds shadows as deep as light. If you found this story as fascinating as we did, please like and subscribe for more mysteries waiting to be revealed, and watch the next video shown on the screen, because the next hidden truth may be even harder to believe.